Hello everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today, we're gonna be talking about pistol. And you might be wondering, what the hell? Why are we talking about pistol? What is a pistol? Yeah, we
What is a pistol?
So what happened was I watched this TV show with my dad because he loved the Sex Pistols. And it's a TV show called Pistol about the band Sex Pistols. And I really liked it and I showed it to Evan. And I was like, hey, do you want to record an episode for it? And he was like, sure. And so we're doing that, even though we didn't do like a recommendation last week to be like, hey, we're gonna watch this. So yeah, that's what happened. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is a TV show about the British punk band, the Sex Pistols, uh, directed by Danny Boyle. It's so
Yeah. All 6 episodes directed by Danny Boyle. It's the craziest thing. So
yeah, and so you might imagine that it is peak, and it indeed is. It is really, 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 really good. I mean, Evan loved it, and he didn't know anything about the Sex Pistols. So
nothing. That's the thing. I'm sure if you are familiar with the band, you'll get like a better experience. But I knew nothing about the Sex Pistols. All I knew was Danny Boyle, and I'm telling you, this show, it's 6 episodes and it's a TV show, but it's just one story, a one-off season, and it almost feels like a movie. The cinematography especially is like some of the best I've seen in TV.
yeah,
It looks and feels like it was shot in the 70s based on how they shoot it and how they grade it and how they put it all and how they mix it with like footage from the time period itself and the aspect ratio.
yeah.
It
I mean, the
is
entire show
such a
is in four
unique
by
looking
three.
show.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, it has one of my favorite like vibes to a show because it fits so much I mean, just the vibe of 70s England, as well as just like obviously the punk culture of that time, which is something I've always been really interested in. I mean, I've always loved the Sex Pistols ever since I was a kid, and my dad showed them to me. And so, like,
Yeah.
seeing it represented like that is just so cool because it feels like you are in the 70s in England. Like,
Well, especially with like the costume design and like
yeah,
the shop sex, there's so much like that was poured into that place into making everything like feel authentic and like of the time period.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
W-
it's an impressive show, and I honestly like the biggest compliment I can give it is it feels like a movie. It feels
Yeah,
like a 6 hour movie,
yeah.
and nothing about it feels like held back or restrained by TV. It's just telling the story of the band, and on top of that, I went into the show like with reservations because band show. We've all seen it before. We've all seen Bohemian Rhapsody, Elvis. Like we've seen the musical biopic with the band that gets up and coming star, and oh my god, we're on top of the world, and the drug problems and marriage problems, and oh my god, I hate you, like that. It's all falling apart. Like Pistol avoids cliches at every corner. Like
Yeah.
we've all seen biopics, but they they tell the story very smartly and in a way that could pretty much only be done through TV. This show could only basically be the way it was if they wanted to tell the story the way they did.
Well, it's interesting, because like we talked about it, their story kind of does follow the cliches of like band member that falls into like
Yeah, well,
drugs and
it's based on a true story, of
yeah,
course. So,
yeah, yeah, obviously.
no,
So it does fall into cliches, but like the show itself is anti-cliche. It's interesting, like it uses the cliches to like do something different, um, to be like we're not gonna exploit it in a cliched way, I guess. Uh, and we're
yeah.
gonna make it like the story extremely like
Well, and a big reason why that is the case is because the characters are very well realized
oh
and
yeah,
they talk to each other. They don't just like hide things behind characters' backs or stuff like that. They argue a lot too.
yeah.
A lot of the like story itself is about the band like not getting along and not agreeing on a lot of creative decisions and a lot of like how they're doing their actual music. So it's
Well, it's interesting because it's obviously about these like 18-year-old white boys that are all like they're in this band and they feel like that. Like a lot of their arguing is like the kind of shit you see like boys arguing, like arguing about nothing, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
usually
the
really
way.
petty and
Yeah, and
like
it's like the way they are
pointless.
like friends, that people like that are friends, like they'll see, they're just fucking, oh, I hate you and whatnot, but then they're just like, or there was a scene with Steve Jones talking to Glenn, remember, on the beach. It was like a very heartfelt scene, and then they just started wrestling. And you were just like, oh, that's such a man
Yeah.
thing to do.
I love that. I love that. There's a lot of those types of scenes where the characters almost like physically fight, and it's like how brothers fight, just like
Yeah.
kitty slapping each other, and yeah. Well, sometimes, because yeah, and this show gets rough. It's like it's not like fully on the side of like classical biopic and like entertaining story, but it delves into dark territory, and they associate that with the music.
Oh
And
yeah.
honestly, it's almost like just a trip down the album because you recommended not listening to the Sex Pistols before I watched the show. It's almost like you get the introduction and the backstory to like a bunch of different songs, and it's
Yeah.
funny seeing them like before they play out and then the music actually done.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially Bodies, which you said was one of your favorite episodes, if not the favorite.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite. Like the way they connect the whole episode to the song at
Yeah.
the end is just ingenious. I
Yeah.
loved that.
Yeah, it makes the song a lot more interesting to listen to, in my opinion, knowing the entire
Yeah,
story.
talk about a different listen when you go back to that, man. Goddamn.
Yeah. And the entire show is based on Steve Jones, who's the creator of the band and guitarist. Um he wrote a book called Lonely Boy, which is what the show's based on. So it's based on like his recounting of the story of the Sex Pistols. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm really really interested in reading it because I think especially the way he is, his writing would be very interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if he's like comedic in the book. I would hope that the book is like entertaining the way that it's written, like kind
Yeah.
of brings you into what's going on with the band. I'm
Yeah.
sure it is.
But yeah, and I mean, the actors as well are just really good. I mean, we always talked about
Yeah,
Johnny Rotten's actor because he's, a show
amazing.
stealer, but
So
they're all really good.
such a show stealer and such a great performance. And yeah, all around the acting is great, but they look the part and they play the part well.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of them are kind of like relatively unknown. Like the guy who
Yeah.
plays Steve is like very like I was looking it up. I think he was like in Dunkirk. He had like a small role there. And there's there were a few things that I noticed him from, but I'm like a lot of these guys. I mean, and they're young, of course.
Yeah.
That's why they hired them. So
Well, yeah, it's kind of the thing with British TV. You get like some amazing actors who you've never seen before, who never do anything else again for their entire life, like anything meaningful, and they're just like some of the best actors you've ever seen. That always happens with British TV. I mean, if you watch Utopia, that's just that. Which also comes back to like it being British. It's just like 6 episodes, and each episode has so
yeah,
much content.
well, yeah, that's the other thing. It's almost like par for the course now when we talk about British TV. But yeah, six episode seasons. That's what this show is, and I don't know what there is like about that number. But like Dunkin' Egg, for instance, is going to be 6 episodes. So I'm hoping will work. But sometimes it's like the perfect number to tell your story. It's the perfect way to like structure everything.
Yeah,
And Utopia, and especially this show, like they cram so much into just one episode of TV. And that's what I always joke about. I'm like, if this were Netflix, like this one episode would be two, maybe even 3 episodes. They'd
yeah.
drag things out more. There'd be less. So that's the funny thing is you can cram a bunch into one story. Like all you have is like 40 minutes. Just make it as interesting as you can.
Well, that's what's so interesting because it's about like, I mean, the band is 4 people, but it's even about more than 4 people because we also focus on Malcolm McLaren, who's the manager. We focus on Vivienne, who runs Sex. We have Sid Vicious, who joins the band later on, and obviously he's always been a part. And then there's Chrissy Hind. Like, there's so many characters, and like I think they're all really explored really well. I mean, I told you, Chrissy Hind is one of my favorite characters in the show, which is not even a part of the band. She's just like
Yeah.
friends with all of the men, especially Steve Jones, and she's just like a really interesting character. And like seeing her start her own band later on in the show with the Pretenders is like very meaningful for the show and her relationship with Steve Jones. It's just like she doesn't even necessarily need to be in the story like to tell the story of the band, but her being in it makes it so
Yeah.
much
But
better.
well, and it's important to draw you into like the time period and the punk culture, like by having other characters who like listen to the music or and are like a part of that world. So it the world feels like lived in and it feels like more
Yeah,
tangible because of that. And yeah, that's why it helps having a bunch of characters.
yeah, who are all really great. And the way this show uses music is also something that I find really cool. Not just like the
Yeah,
obviously the music from the band, but like they use music from the time so much.
yeah, and music videos. That was
Yeah,
another thing that I was talking about with the cinematography that's amazing. Like, they will insert the music videos of, like, the songs they're playing or other, like, footage from the actual time, and they'll put that alongside their actual footage, but because the aspect ratio is the way it is, that it it just feels like you're cutting to something else basically because of the way that, like, the, show actually looks, it fits so well with that, and it's just there's constant music, constant soundtrack choices, and constant like cutting back to footage, and all of it, it just makes you feel like you're watching something that was made at the time.
yeah,
There's something that just feels like utterly authentic about it and doesn't feel like faked at all or like it's trying to be like the 70s. It's just
yeah.
it genuinely feels like it.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like the entire show is like a music video. The way it's shot, like everything
Yeah,
seems so like
kind of.
kind of like over the top, like stylistic, just to like show off. Like there's so many shots where like it doesn't need to look like this, but it does because it's cool. So why not? And
Well,
it's
that
just
effect, the slowdown, I don't
yeah,
know what the name of that is, but, like, you were comparing
to
it to,
melancholia. Yeah.
Dread or
Oh, Dread as
the
well.
drug
Yeah, the
effect. Yeah,
slow
yeah, yeah,
mo
like,
drug and Dread as well. Yeah,
tons of movies use an effect like that, but, yeah, the way they used it was pretty insane, so,
yeah,
I we're kind of, like, gonna dance around spoilers, and obviously, we're probably not gonna go into too much specifics, but at the end of the day, this is almost like a
yeah,
recommendation, like, if you love the Sex Pistols, I'm sure you'll love this show, and if you've never heard of them, like, just go into this expecting, like, it just it's a notch above what you would imagine from TV, and that's the thing, I really feel like it feels like a movie.
yeah,
It feels like a long movie that is telling the story exactly the way it needed to be told, and every episode is just crammed with great material, great soundtrack, and it's just a great show. Just 6 episodes long.
yeah. I mean, episode one, I think, is just like if you watch it, you're gonna be sold on this show because it is so good. Like I think the pilot is one of the
Yeah,
best
it's
episodes of the show, honestly.
I love shows like that too. I always cite, Fargo season 1 as that in terms of, like, if you're not in after the first episode, you're not in. Like,
Uh-huh.
I just watch episode 1. I guarantee you'll wanna watch the rest of the show.
Yeah. Love shows like that as well. Yeah, it's oh, it's really good. I'm so glad. I my dad showed me that show because like nobody seems to know about it, which is like
Well, yeah, it's
frustrating.
Danny Boyle, and it's I find it hilarious because this came out in 2022. I find it hilarious, like, how relatively little noise this has made,
Yeah.
because he directed all 6 episodes, and it doesn't always happen with shows like this, but it's amazing, and it feels like that. It feels like Danny Boyle had complete control and was, like, the creative force behind this one, so
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can tell he was passionate about making this show. There's a lot of passion that was put into making it because it's like you can tell like everything about this show is just so purposeful and like well thought out that you're just like, man, someone really cared. Which is really nice to see, especially about a band that I like so much. Seeing something so cool about them.
yeah, that's always nice that you get, like, a media associated with something you love.
Yeah,
Well,
but it's actually well done. It's
yeah.
this reminded me actually that Johnny Rotten, aka John Lydon, actually sued the producers of this show, um, which
Man,
I
you
think
were
is worth mentioning.
that sounded kind of petty from what you were describing. It sounded like it, like, had to do with the fact that they didn't make money off of the show and or o of
The band. Well,
the
the
band
thing is,
itself, and therefore,
Malcolm
like, the show
McLaren's
shouldn't.
yeah, Malcolm McLaren like stole money from them, and so they never made like basically any money from the band itself. Other than like the Filthy Lucre shows they did a tour called Filthy Lucre, specifically so they would make money. They're like, oh, we hate each other, but we're gonna get back together to make money. Um, which I think is fair enough. Like they never made money from the band, and so I assume he was suing the producer so they'd like pay him some royalties or something. That was why he just wanted money from the show. I That's what I assume because like, it's hard to say why because we don't know, but it would be weird if he was suing because of like the portrayal of him in the show. Because Evan, you would kind of agree with me on that he's basically like the hero of the show. He's the character who's most constantly
Yeah,
right.
I could see like Malcolm like suing the show or something like,
Yeah,
and you know how that is. There's always a villain in these biopics. And by the way, that it's so funny. This show has that character, but they are not like you would
yeah.
imagine. But oh God, what were you saying before? I completely lost. No, no, no. Yeah, jo- Johnny is awesome in the show, and it's like you could not. That was my original thought. It's like suing the show. I'm like, oh, it must be for like defamation, right? I'm like that, not his character. He's the show stealer. He's
Yeah.
awesome. Like the guy's amazing. So it was probably for something like that, where
Yeah.
maybe
I
just
that
trying to
it would
squeeze a
make
little
more
blood out of a
sense,
rock.
yeah. Yeah. But John Lydon does actually have a band called Public Image Limited nowadays that play some post-punk that is quite good as well. So I do recommend that if you like the Sex Pistols and you want more. And actually the Sex Pistols are gonna come to Brazil this year. They're gonna get
Ooh.
another
Do they like
singer.
keep doing music, or like, or is that, or are they like reviving now with the new singer?
I think they're just gonna like tour. I don't know if they're gonna make new music. I know that John
Because
Lydon said he's never gonna make new music for the Sex Pistols, even though they've done a few shows with him. Um,
oh, so they just like do their own, like they just redo the songs from the same album and just like
that as
play the
far as I
music they
know,
have.
that's what it's gonna be. I doubt they're gonna come out with new music,
Hmm.
especially because John
It,
Lydon doesn't really want to doesn't want to make any new music for the Sex Pistols, and he was like the brains behind the entire thing because like he was the
yeah, it would
writer,
be
he was
kind
the
of
singer.
weird after all this time too. Like it'd be a strange thing to just start try produce new music from there. So,
Yeah, but
but
I know
that's kind of
they're
cool if they
coming to
still play.
Brazil. Yeah, they're coming to Brazil this year, which I really want to go. But we'll see.
My God.
But yeah. I mean that's as far as we can go without like spoilers. Um,
Pretty much, yeah. I think we've done a decent job, like recommending this, like
yeah.
painting a picture, but not spoiling it. But yeah, like huge recommendation. Like seriously, I was saying it like that. This show, it feels like something that should be on the Criterion Collection.
Oh
It's
yeah.
important. It's an important show that looks amazing and is so good at telling the story that I'm just like I wish something like this had a Blu-ray, and I wish more people knew about it, but it's unfortunately been just kind of hidden away, and not
Yeah,
many
I mean,
people have
yeah, Disney
heard
took
of
it
it. And
off everything. I think it's still on Hulu in America, but in Brazil they took it off Disney Plus,
it
so it's genuinely impossible to watch unless you pirate it, in Brazil at least.
yeah, it's here. Like I think it was also on like Amazon
Oh yeah,
Prime,
I
but
think you look to buy it on Amazon. Yeah,
even then, it's still like it's still just kind of been pushed to the side.
yeah.
It's just not a show that a lot of people know about. I was looking it up on YouTube to see if there were like video essays that were like
There's like
say like,
one, and it
the
says the
greatest show
TV
you.
show's bad. Remember, we
Yeah,
were reading that, and it
exactly.
says like the show's without emotion. Like, okay, buddy, if you say so.
Yeah, I pretty hilarious how little discourse there is. So
Yeah,
if you've never heard of this show, just go in blind. I think you'll love it.
yeah, and you should listen to the Sex Pistols. That's also something you should do.
They're good, honestly.
Yeah.
It's funny just seeing the show and like telling the story of the music. But yeah, and it enriches the music. Seriously,
Oh
like
yeah.
that's why I'd recommend it, even if you just have only heard the music, you don't know too much about the band, because it makes those songs better.
Oh yes, it does. And well, I think that's it. This is basically like a special episode or something that we just decided to
Yeah,
do because we
a
finished this
little
show and thought it was worth
interim.
mentioning. Yeah. Um, I have no clue when this is gonna be released because I don't know if this is following the correct schedule I have for the podcast, but it's fine. Um, but yeah, thank you very much, people, for watching, and yeah, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Oh boy.